Hi, we're going to try something that I've been messing around with. I wanted to kind of show how it works so that maybe somebody can get some use out of it. Um, Pretty much this is the generic default window, but I've made my own. I call it 3D Paint. I keep a properties window here, a properties window just set for brushes over here, a little UV window, and a node group. I'm going to change the cycles because that's what we're going to work in right now, and GPU. I'm going to go ahead and set up for particle systems because that's what we're going to work with. I need to make a group, so I'm going to get out of the default cube, add in some icospheres, scale that one down, then duplicate it, scale it on Y a little bit, scale it down, then duplicate that, scale on Z, and scale on X a little bit, and rotate a little bit, shift duplicate, scale, and in edit mode I'm going to distend it with proportional editing. Grab that and grab that. Just get something different than what the other ones are. Okay, and back to object mode. I'm going to look at them from the side. And these are all going to be part of a group. So Control G, call them particle. And we're going to move that to another layer. Shift S the cursor to center. I'm going to work with just a Suzanne right now as a basic object. So monkey, edit mode, U, smart project 0.03. That way we can see everything over there. Object mode, Control 2 to put the second layer subsurf on, smooth that, and then we're going to set up the particle system. We're going to use hair, and all of a sudden it's way out there. I'm not going to worry about that because we're going to set the group and choose our particles. Now at this point we've got everything is kind of bumpy big, but we're going to set up random sizes so that we get something that's more usable. And I'm going to run the size down a little bit more to something that would be more like dust. 0.2. Okay, then what I really need to do is go to weight paint either here or use it from there. Now that we've actually gone into weight paint, I believe it adds, yes, no? Vertex group? Not yet. I need to actually paint on here. Okay, we got that. Shift F. And we're going to put auto normalize. So anyway, that gives us our group. We can now go here in the particles to say for density, length, and clump, I guess would be good. So depending on how you want to do this, just painting around. And this is vertex, so it unfortunately it's not the same thing as if you were painting just a black and white map as a stencil, but it's still pretty useful. And maybe on the top of the ear here. I guess that's because there's no verts there. and see what we can do. Okay, and maybe just a little bit on the eye. Okay, so now there's not a lot going on here yet, so I'm thinking maybe I need to put up the number up from 1,000 to maybe 10,000, and that'll be nicer. Yeah, okay, so now we need to go to solid view and object mode, and we're going to add a material. We'll need to add a image texture, I don't know what happened there, but it scared me. Okay, we're going to have an image texture, and we're going to need to use the UV, so we're going to get the UV map as a separate input. Plug that to the vector. We're going to create a new image, and we'll call this stencil, or sorry, bake, and we're going to fill it with a UV grid just so we can see how it works. And we're going to mention there, bake, go to texture view, we can see how it works. So we're ready. We just need to bake this out. We've got the image mentioned here, but it's not actually part of it's not hooked to anything, so we can bake to it in cycles. I need to set the sampling to 100 for decent. We're not worried about the noise. Actually, it'll actually help us out. And in the bake panel, we want to bake ambient occlusion, and this should be it. And let's go. The object disappears while you're baking. Looks pretty cool to actually just see the calculations happening from the particles. Okay, and there's our map. And if we go to texture view close up, we can see, but the particles are still on top. So let's go to the modifier, and we'll turn off the visibility of the particles, and you can see the resulting pits that are there. And you can actually use a couple of different particle systems and get some really interesting stuff. So how would we use this? Actually, it's pretty simple. What we're going to do is save this image to desktop, and then I'm going to construct a little bit of a mix of images here. Shift A, shader, mix shader, duplicate this, run that in there. This is going to be our stencil. Now I'm going to set up a couple of other materials. Also, I need to invert because this is white with black. We need to have it black with white. Shift A, color, invert. That way it'll react the way we expect it. This will be the top and this will be the bottom. So input, texture, image texture. I'm going to open up something from my desktop, or sorry, my originals. These are photographs I made with my camera. I'm going to go with something kind of like a rock, and this is going to go into this one. We're going to go box shading and full blend. I need to put an input for a texture coordinate. I'm going to use generated. And while we're there, let's go ahead and use nodes and turn on ambient occlusion. I've got this image, this shader is kind of just nothing but just a dark shader, so I'm going to kind of make it like an orange, dark orange, so those will be orange pits coming through. and I'm going to duplicate this one and add a glossy shader. Okay, and if we go rendered right now, you'll see that you've got those pits coming through. What I'd like to do is actually change up and add another level to this. Unless I like that bump, but for right now I'm going to leave it like that. So we're going to go to compositing, and we're going to use the nodes. I'm going to use an image node to reference our map and output for a viewer. So once we do that, we can change this to viewer. Okay. We're going to use a filter blur. Just for a couple pixels. We're going to use a dilate erode. Threshold. And see if we can get some stark contrast. Okay, and we've got it's an interesting change, so we'll go ahead and save that image as well. Save as image, and we'll call it bake 2, or sorry, bake 1. We'll come back to our painting, and what we're going to do is use that other one, the other bake, as a stencil for the gloss. Load bake 1 and run that as a stencil there, and let's see how our render goes. Yeah, we don't need the invert. We do need a color mix node, so we can run a little bit of it that way. I also need to set up something for it to reflect, so let's go ahead and go to the world space. Shift A, shader, mix shader, duplicate the background. I'm going to set that one to black, put that in the bottom, which is actually the top. Then we're going to add a environment texture, which I'm going to open something from my internet stuff. Then we're going to run that in there, and we're going to go to a light path node and run the camera as the factor for the mix. So there we have quite a bit reflection on the surface, but you still have that coming through. Now, to get this to be more like a real thing, a real object, instead of being so slick, I want to try to put a bump node in here. And we're going to run that. To there. And I think we can actually plug it into the gloss as well. Okay, with the gloss you get quite a bit more of a surface because of the noise from the cycles. That's what I was saying. It's actually pretty beneficial depending on what kind of material you're trying to show. This really looks like a really kind of almost like a rough metal. So like I said, depends on what you need. Here we can turn the strength down, and then we get something pretty nice. So this is something that you can actually use for a lot of different things that are actually small in camera, so that you don't have to actually paint full maps and hand paint everything. You can use combination of images and stencils and shaders to really make the difference here. And like I said, this is all one material. You could actually plug it together with a whole nother string of this. You can turn around and put a whole different value down here and mix them together with another stencil, so you can get like a wood section coming through or something. But hopefully this will help some people out understanding how you can get around doing stuff. Talk to you later.